The station floated in the darkness of space like a white jewel. It was massive, larger than any building ever made on Earth. Lights blinked across its surface in patterns that seemed almost alive. This was Station Omicron 7, the place where the Galactic Concord tested every new species before allowing them into galactic society. Captain Park stood at the viewport of the human shuttle, watching the station grow larger as they approached. She was a tall woman with short black hair and calm eyes that rarely showed what she was thinking. Behind her, 3 other humans waited in silence. Lieutenant Lee sat closest to the door, his back straight and his hands resting on his knees. He was younger than by 5 years, but his face carried the serious expression of someone who had seen difficult things. He had been a soldier before joining the diplomatic corps, and old habits never truly died. Specialists stood by the medical station, checking her equipment for the 3rd time. She was the team's, an expert in alien life forms. Her fingers moved quickly over her tablet as she reviewed everything humanity knew about the Galactic Concord. It was not much. The aliens had contacted Earth only 6 months ago, and this meeting would decide humanity's future among the stars. The last member of the team was Engineer. He was a large man with thick arms and a friendly face that made people trust him immediately. He was examining the shuttle's systems, not because anything was wrong, but because keeping his hands busy helped him stay calm. Docking in 5 minutes, the shuttle's computer announced. Turn to face her team. Remember what we discussed. We are here to pass their tests and earn humanity's place in the galactic community. Be polite, be cooperative, show them we come in peace. And if they don't treat us well, asked quietly. Met his eyes. Then we stay polite anyway. We cannot afford to fail here. Earth is counting on us. The shuttle shuddered slightly as it connected with the station. A moment later, the airlock doors slid open, and cold, sterile air flowed into the ship. Standing in the corridor beyond were 3 aliens. The first was a creature that stood on 4 legs while 2 more limbs folded across its chest like arms. Its head was covered with compound eyes that reflected the light in thousands of tiny mirrors. This was, the lead examiner, had been told to expect it. The other 2 were different species entirely. One was tall and covered in blue scales, with a mouth full of sharp teeth. The other was smaller, almost like a floating ball of gray flesh with tentacles hanging beneath it. The Galactic Concord was made of hundreds of different species, and these 3 represented its authority. Welcome to Station Omicron 7, said. Its voice was sharp and clicking, translated into English by a small device attached to its chest. You will follow all instructions. You will answer all questions truthfully. Resistance will be noted. Deception will be noted. All data will be preserved for classification. Stepped forward and bowed her head slightly. Thank you for receiving us. We are honored to be here and will cooperate fully with your procedures. His compound eyes studied her for a long moment. Then it turned and began walking down the corridor. Follow. The humans were led through a maze of white hallways. Everything was clean and bright, almost painfully so. They passed windows that looked into other rooms where different aliens sat at computer terminals or walked between machines that hummed with strange energy. Nobody looked at them. It seemed that new species arriving for testing was a common event here. Finally, they reached a large circular room with 5 doors leading off in different directions. Stopped in the center and turned to face them. You will be separated for individual testing. This is standard procedure. Do not be alarmed. Raised her hand slightly. May I ask what kind of tests these will be? Physical examination, neural scanning, psychological evaluation, scenario simulation, listed these without emotion. The classification protocol has been used on 12,417 species. It is accurate, it is fair. You will be assigned a designation based on your results, threat, neutral, or safe. And what happens depending on our designation? Asked. Threat species are contained or eliminated. Neutral species are monitored. Safe species are welcomed into the conquered as minor members. Eyes glittered. Most species are safe. We expect humans will be the same. Before could respond, the blue-scaled alien stepped forward and pointed at this one, Chamber 3. Then it pointed at this one, Chamber 1. It continued assigning each human to a different door. Found herself being led toward Chamber 5 by itself. She looked back once at her team, gave her a small nod, managed a nervous smile, waved with forced cheerfulness. Then the doors closed and she was alone. The chamber was small and round, with a single chair in the center surrounded by floating machines. Gestured for her to sit. We will begin with neural scanning. This will measure your brain activity while you answer questions. Please relax. Sat down and placed her hands on the armrests. A metal band lowered itself onto her forehead, cold against her skin. State your name. Park. State your position. Captain of the Human Diplomatic Delegation. State your species' primary method of conflict resolution. Paused. It was an interesting question. We prefer negotiation and compromise. We try to find solutions that benefit everyone involved. The machines hummed and clicked, watched a display screen that could not see. Your species has a history of internal warfare. Explain. That is true, admitted. We have fought many wars among ourselves, but we have also learned from those wars. We have built systems to prevent them. We created international organizations, treaties, methods of peaceful resolution. We are not perfect, but we are trying to be better. More humming, more clicking. Describe your emotional response to the following scenario. A member of your species is injured by a member of another species. The injury was accidental. I would feel concern for the injured person first. Then I would want to understand how the accident happened and prevent it from happening again. I would not feel anger toward the other species if it was truly an accident. The questions continued for over an hour. Some were simple, some were strange. A few seemed designed to make her angry or scared, but kept her voice calm and her answers measured. She had been trained for this. Finally, raised one of its limbs. Initial testing complete. You will now wait while your companions finish their evaluations. Was led to a waiting room where she found already sitting. He looked tired but unhurt. How was it? She asked. Strange, he said. They asked me about building things, about what I would create if I had unlimited resources, about whether I would design weapons. He shrugged. I told them I prefer to build things that help people. An hour later, joined them then. They shared their experiences quietly, comparing the questions they had been asked. All of them had been tested on their responses to conflict, their emotional reactions, their instincts when threatened. They are trying to figure out if we are dangerous, said. Of course they are, replied, and we showed them we are not. The door opened and entered with a holographic display floating beside it. On the display were two words that would change everything. Species human classification, safe. Congratulations, said, though its voice held no warmth. Your species has been classified as safe. You present no threat to the galactic conquered. You will be welcomed as minor members pending final administrative approval. Stood and bowed. Thank you, we are grateful for this opportunity. But as she straightened, she noticed something in its compound eyes. It was not respect. It was not even interest. It was dismissal. The look one gave to something so unimportant that it barely deserved attention. The humans had passed the test, but wondered if the conquered truly understood what they had just classified as harmless. The celebration was short. Within an hour of receiving their safe classification, the humans were informed that additional testing would be required before final approval. Standard procedure, explained. Nothing to worry about. Did not like it, but she had no choice. They were guests here, far from Earth, surrounded by aliens whose technology was centuries beyond anything humanity possessed. Refusing was not an option. The team was separated again, this time into individual quarters. The rooms were comfortable enough, with soft beds and clean water, but there were no windows and the doors locked from the outside. Tried not to think of them as cells. 3 hours passed, then 6, then 12. Pressed the communication panel beside her door. "Hello, we were told the additional testing would be brief. How much longer will we be waiting?" There was no response. She tried again an hour later, still nothing. By the 20th hour, knew something was wrong. The Concord had shown them nothing but cold efficiency since their arrival. This delay made no sense unless it was intentional. In another part of the station, researcher Han was discovering just how intentional it was the youngest member of the delegation at only 24 years old. She had not been part of the original team, but had been added at the last moment when the Concord requested a fifth human for their testing protocols. She was brilliant, having earned her doctorate before her 23rd birthday, but she had never been in a situation like this before. The room they had taken her to was different from the others. It was darker, with no furniture except for a single chair bolted to the floor. The walls were made of a material that seemed to absorb light. Standing across from her were two Concord officials she had not seen before, and between them was a large reptilian creature covered in dark green scales. This was, and unlike, there was nothing dismissive in the way he looked at her. His yellow eyes studied her like a predator studying prey. "You are the youngest," said. His voice was deep and rough, like stones grinding together. "Our analysis suggests you will be the most cooperative." "Cooperative with what?" asked. She tried to keep her voice steady, but her heart was beating fast. "Your species has been classified as safe. This is unusual. The Council wishes to verify the accuracy of this classification through extended evaluation." "What kind of evaluation?" Did not answer. Instead, he pressed a button on a device attached to his arm. A section of the wall slid open, revealing another room beyond. Inside, could see Lee strapped to a metal table. His face was bruised and there was blood running from a cut above his eye. His breath stopped in her chest. "Lieutenant Lee refused to cooperate with our questions," said calmly. "He has a strong will for a member of a safe species. This has made the Council curious." "What did you do to him?" His voice came out as a whisper. "We asked questions. He did not answer. We applied pressure. He still did not answer," tilted his massive head. "Now we will ask you the same questions and you will watch what happens to him if you also refuse." Felt something cold spreading through her body. It took her a moment to recognize it as fear, but there was something else beneath it, something hotter. "What questions?" she asked. "Your vessel contains encoded data about Earth's defensive capabilities. We want the access codes. We are a diplomatic mission. We do not have military information." Made a sound that might have been a laugh. "All species lie about their military capabilities. This is expected, but safe species tell the truth when properly motivated." He pressed another button and heard cry out in pain through the speakers. The sound cut through her like a knife. "Stop," she shouted. "We told you the truth. We do not have that information." "The female is distressed," one of the other officials noted, typing on a floating screen. "Elevated heart rate, adrenaline response, standard fear reaction for safe classification." Stepped closer too. He was nearly 3 meters tall, and standing this close, she had to tilt her head back to see his face. "Your species bonds strongly with pack members. Our research confirms this. You will not want to see your pack member suffer." He leaned down until his snout was centimeters from her face. "Give us the codes." Through the window, could see shaking his head. Even through the pain, even through the blood, he was telling her not to give in. "I do not have the codes," said. Her voice was stronger now. "Even if I wanted to help you, I could not. I am a researcher, not a military officer." studied her for a long moment. Then he straightened and walked toward the door connecting to his room. Then we will continue the evaluation until one of you provides useful information. He disappeared through the door. A moment later, heard cry out again. Something changed inside her. Had always been the quiet one, the one who preferred books to sports, who solved problems with her mind rather than her hands. She had never been in a fight in her life. She had never even raised her voice in anger. But watching through that window, listening to the sounds of pain, she felt something ancient wake up inside her. Something that humans had carried in their blood since the days when they had faced lions on the African plains with nothing but sharpened sticks and the determination not to die. The two officials in the room with her had stopped watching her. They were focused on their screens, recording data about stress responses and fear hormones. They had already dismissed her as harmless. The tests had confirmed it. Looked at the chair bolted to the floor. It was heavy metal, but one of the bolts was loose. She had noticed it when she sat down but had thought nothing of it at the time. She looked at the officials. Neither was armed. They were researchers, not soldiers. Why would they need weapons to study a safe species? She looked at the door to his room. It was 5 meters away. In the window, she saw raise his hand to strike again. The officials later tried to explain what happened next. Their reports were confused and contradictory because neither of them could believe what their own eyes had seen. The human female moved. She moved faster than any safe species should be able to move. One moment she was standing by the wall. The next moment she had crossed the room and struck the first official in the throat with her elbow. He collapsed, gasping for air. The second official tried to call for help, but before he could touch his communication device, the human had grabbed his arm and twisted it behind his back with terrible precision. There was a cracking sound. The official screamed and fell. The whole thing took less than 4 seconds. Stood over the two fallen aliens, breathing hard. Her hands were shaking. She had never hurt anyone before, and some part of her was horrified by what she had just done. But a larger part of her was already moving toward the door. Needed her, her pack member needed her. Everything else could wait. She grabbed a metal tool from one of the fallen official's belts. She did not know what it was for, but it was heavy and solid in her hand. Then she opened the door and stepped into the room where was waiting. The reptilian turned, surprise flickering across his scaled face. He had expected many things from the humans, but not this, not from one who had been labeled safe. What he began did not let him finish. Somewhere in the station, alarms began to wail. Red lights flashed in corridors that had been peaceful moments before. Security teams scrambled to respond to reports of violence in Evaluation Chamber 7. And in a monitoring room far across the station, stared at its screens with growing horror as its carefully ordered classification system shattered like glass. The humans were not supposed to be capable of this. The tests had been clear. The tests had been wrong. The alarms screamed through every corridor of Station Omicron 7. Red emergency lights painted the white walls in shades of blood. For the first time in 300 years of operation, the station was in chaos. Ran through the monitoring center, its 4 legs clicking frantically against the floor. Data streams flooded every screen, each one showing something impossible. How is this happening? It demanded. The classification was they were safe. Its assistant, a small furry creature named Paul, pulled up the security feeds with trembling paws. Chamber 7 is offline. The human female has incapacitated examiner and freed the male prisoner. They are moving toward the central hub. Send security teams. We did 3 teams. Paul swallowed hard. They are not responding anymore. Felt its compound eyes widen. 3 security teams. 12 trained soldiers from 3 different species, all armed with the best weapons the conquered could provide. and they had been stopped by two humans, one of whom was already injured. On another screen, more alarms flashed. "Sir," Paul said weakly, "the other humans are free." In her locked quarters, Park had heard the alarms and known immediately that something had gone terribly wrong. She had pressed herself against the wall beside the door and waited. When the guard came to check on her, she was ready. The alien was a thin creature similar to. It opened the door and stepped inside, weapon raised, expecting to find a frightened human cowering in the corner. Instead, it found nothing. Before it could turn around, had wrapped her arm around its throat from behind. The alien struggled, but had been trained in close combat during her military service. She knew exactly how much pressure to apply and exactly where to apply it. 20 seconds later, the guard was unconscious on the floor. Took its weapon, a strange device that hummed with energy, and its communication unit. She did not know how to use either one properly, but having them was better than having nothing. The corridors outside were in confusion. Aliens ran in every direction, some toward the emergency and some away from it. Nobody paid attention to the human woman moving calmly through the chaos. They were looking for threats, and she did not look threatening. She looked calm. She looked controlled. She looked safe. She found 3 levels down, in what appeared to be an engineering section. He had already freed himself, somehow. He had used components from the room's lighting system to override the magnetic lock on his door, and was studying a schematic displayed on the wall. "Captain," he said when he saw her. There was relief in his voice, but also something harder. "They took and somewhere else. I heard screaming before the alarm started." "I know, we need to find them." Pointed to the schematic. "This shows the whole station layout. The evaluation chambers are here." He traced a path with his finger. "But there are security checkpoints between us and them." "How many?" "4, and I am reading at least 30 armed personnel in that section." Studied the map. 30 soldiers, 4 checkpoints, 2 of them with only basic tools and stolen equipment. In any normal calculation, the odds were impossible. But was not thinking about odds anymore. She was thinking about her people. "Find us another way," she said. Smiled grimly. "Already working on it. There is a maintenance tunnel that runs beneath the main corridors. It is not on the public schematics. I found it by accident while looking for power conduits. It should get us past the first 3 checkpoints. And the 4th. We will figure that out when we get there." They moved through the maintenance tunnels, crawling through spaces barely large enough for human bodies. Twice they heard security teams pass overhead, shouting orders in languages the translation devices could not process fast enough. But the aliens never thought to check below. Why would they? The tunnels were not meant for personnel, and safe species did not think like soldiers. Meanwhile was making her own escape. She had been held in a laboratory, surrounded by scientists who wanted to study human biology in greater detail. When the alarm started, they had locked her in a sealed room while they went to investigate. Their mistake was not a soldier-like or an engineer-like, but she was which meant she understood how alien bodies worked, and the laboratory was full of chemicals. She did not make a weapon, she made something better. When the scientists returned 20 minutes later, they found the sealed room filled with a thick purple gas. Stood in the center, completely unharmed, holding a breathing mask made from laboratory equipment. The gas was harmless to humans, but to the 3 alien species in the room, it was a powerful sedative. They collapsed before they could even cry out. Stepped over their sleeping bodies and walked out of the laboratory. She had memorized the station layout during her initial tour. She knew exactly where she needed to go. In the monitoring center, watched these events unfold with something approaching terror. "They are not behaving like a safe species," it said. "They are coordinating, they are adapting, they are hunting," Paul finished quietly. "They are hunting us." The realization struck like a physical blow. The humans were not panicking. They were not fleeing. They were systematically working their way through the station, neutralizing threats and gathering resources, moving with purpose toward a clear objective. This was not the behavior of prey animals caught in a trap. This was the behavior of predators. "Contact the Council," ordered. "We need to initiate emergency reclassification protocols." "For what designation?" Hesitated. In all its years as an examiner, it had never faced this situation. The classification protocol had categories for aggressive species, for dangerous species, for species that needed to be contained or eliminated. But those species showed their nature during testing. They bared their teeth. They displayed their violence. They made themselves known. The humans had done none of those things. They had smiled. They had cooperated. They had answered every question with patience and politeness. Every test had confirmed their harmlessness. And yet here they were, four small beings from a primitive world, tearing through a station designed to contain the most dangerous creatures in the galaxy. "I do not know," admitted. "There is no classification for this. There is no protocol." The door to the monitoring center slid open. Park stepped inside, the stolen weapon held steady in her hands. Behind her came, holding a device he had built from spare parts that hummed with barely contained energy. Behind him came, her lab coat stained with purple chemical residue. They were bruised. They were tired. They had fought their way through a hostile alien station with nothing but their wits and their will. They did not look safe anymore. "Where are End?" asked. Her voice was calm, but there was steel beneath it. Backed away until it hit the wall. Its compound eyes darted between the three humans, looking for escape routes, finding none. "I did not know," it stammered. "The extended evaluation was not my decision. The Council wanted." I did not ask about the Council, took another step forward. I asked about my people. For a long moment, nobody moved. The alarms continued to wail. The screens continued to flash with emergency alerts, and realized with perfect clarity that its life depended on what it said next. "Chamber 7, it whispered. "Level 12, Section Beta, they are both alive." Nodded slowly. "Then you are going to help us get to them. And if anything happens to either of them before we arrive, I want you to understand something." She leaned close, her eyes locked on 1,000 tiny reflections. "Your tests measured what we are when we feel safe. You never measured what we become when someone hurts our family." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "You should have tested for that." Had examined thousands of species. It had seen predators with claws that could tear through metal. It had seen creatures with venom that could kill in seconds. It had seen beings of pure energy that could incinerate entire ships. None of them had ever frightened it as much as the look in this human's eyes. "Follow me," it said quietly. "I will take you to them." The corridor to Chamber 7 was long and silent. Emergency lights cast red shadows on the walls, and the distant sound of alarms echoed from somewhere far away. But here, in this part of the station, everything had gone quiet. The security teams had been called elsewhere. The scientists had fled. Only and the three humans moved through the empty hallway. Walked in front, its four legs trembling with each step. Behind it, kept her weapon trained on its back. Watched the side corridors for threats. Monitored a stolen communication device, listening to the confused chatter of the station's security forces. "I have a question," said quietly. "Your classification system, how does it work?" Glanced back, surprised by the calm tone of her voice. "Why do you want to know?" "Because I am a scientist. I like to understand things." Despite everything, despite the fear and the chaos and the weapon pointed at its body, felt a small spark of its old pride. The classification protocol was its life's work. Even now, it could not resist explaining it. "We measure everything," it said. "Physical capabilities, cognitive patterns, emotional responses, social structures. We run simulations to predict behavior under stress. We analyze millions of data points to determine the threat level of each species. And what data points did you use for us? Standard measurements: aggression index, fear response, pack bonding behavior, pain tolerance. Paused. Your species scored remarkably low on aggression. Lower than most herbivore species, in fact. Your fear responses were moderate. Your pain tolerance was average. Everything indicated a docile, cooperative species with no significant threat potential. Made a sound that might have been a laugh. You measured us while we were comfortable. Did not understand, comfortable. You tested us in controlled conditions, clean rooms, polite questions, no real danger, shook his head. You saw what humans are like when everything is fine, when we have nothing to fight for. That is the standard protocol. All species are tested under identical conditions to ensure fair comparison. And that is where you made your mistake, said. Her voice was quiet but carried clearly in the empty corridor. You assumed that how we behave when we are safe is how we behave always. But humans are not constant. We are not predictable. We are adaptive. His compound eyes flickered with confusion. All species adapt to their environments. This is basic biology. Not like we do. Pulled up data on her stolen device, information the Conquered had gathered about Earth. Look at our history. We started as weak, soft creatures on a planet filled with predators bigger and stronger than us. We had no claws, no fangs, no venom, no natural weapons at all. This is true. It is part of why you were classified as safe. But we survived anyway. Do you know how? Did not answer. The question had never seemed important before. We learned to work together, continued. We formed packs, tribes, communities. We shared knowledge and resources. We protected each other. And when something threatened our pack, we did not run away. We did not surrender. We found ways to destroy that threat, no matter how big or strong it was. They reached a heavy door marked with alien symbols, pressed its identification chip against the lock, and the door slid open. Beyond was another corridor, darker than the first. We hunted creatures that could kill us with a single blow, said as they walked. We brought down mammoths with sharpened sticks. We killed lions and tigers and bears. We survived ice ages and famines and plagues. We did it because we refused to give up, because we protected our own. This is interesting history, said carefully, but it does not explain tonight. You were tested. You showed no aggression. You answered every question peacefully. Because we had no reason to fight. His voice hardened. You gave us food, you gave us shelter, you asked polite questions. You were not a threat, so we were not a threat. But then you hurt our people. His words were cold and precise. You took, you made them scream. Remembered the screaming. It had been part of the extended evaluation, designed to test the limits of human cooperation. Standard procedure for verifying safe classifications. It had never considered what the screaming might awaken. We have a word in our language, said. We call it wrath. It is what happens when someone hurts the people we love. It is not the same as anger. Anger burns hot and fades quickly. Wrath is cold, patient. It does not stop until the threat is eliminated. They reached another door. This one required a code. His limbs shook as it entered the sequence. Your classification system measures aggression as a constant trait, said. High or low, always the same. But human aggression is not constant. It is conditional. We are the friendliest species in the galaxy until we are not. We are the most peaceful until someone gives us a reason to be otherwise. The door opened. Beyond it was a small room filled with security monitors. On the screens, and were visible in Chamber 7, was still strapped to the table, barely conscious. Stood over the unconscious body of, holding a metal rod stained with something dark. She looked up as entered the room, and her face transformed from hard determination to overwhelming relief. Captain, we're here, said. We're all here. while worked to override the locks on the chamber, watched the humans reunite, rushed to check injuries, collapsed against, shaking with delayed shock, called out updates on the door's progress. They were a pack, a family. They moved around each other with perfect coordination, each one knowing their role, each one supporting the others. And finally understood what its tests had missed. The humans were not dangerous because of their physical strength or their technology or their intelligence. They were dangerous because of their bonds. Each human would die to protect the others. Each human would kill to protect the others. They did not care about odds or logic or survival probability. They only cared about their pack. "Why did your people do this?" asked suddenly. The question came out before it could stop itself. The extended evaluation, the torture, why did the council order it? Turned to look at the examiner. Her face was tired and stained with the evidence of battle, but her eyes were thoughtful. "You were scared," she said. "Your tests told you we were harmless, but something felt wrong. You could not identify it, but you sensed that we were more than what we appeared. So you pushed. You tested our limits. You wanted to see what we would do when pressed." Felt a chill run through its body. It was exactly right. "Now you know," continued, "and you need to ask yourself a question. You can continue treating us as enemies. You can try to contain us or eliminate us like you do with other threat species. But understand that we did not start this. We came here in peace. We answered your questions honestly. We wanted to be friends." She paused, letting the words sink in. "You chose to hurt our people, and we responded. That is who we are. We match what we are given. Give us friendship and we will be the most loyal allies you have ever known. Give us violence." She gestured at the monitors showing the chaos throughout the station. "And you get this." The door to Chamber 7 finally slid open. The humans rushed inside. Immediately began treating wounds with supplies from a medical kit she had taken from the laboratory. Helped support him as they prepared to move. Stood in the doorway watching. "What will you do now?" it asked. Lifted its arm over her shoulder. "We are going to our ship. We are going to leave this station. And then we are going to report everything that happened here to the Galactic Council. They will not believe you. Humans are a safe species. The records are wrong." His voice left no room for argument. "And after tonight, everyone in the galaxy is going to know it." She led her team toward the exit, then paused and looked back one final time. "You wanted to classify us. Fine. Here is our true classification. We are not safe and we are not threat. We are conditional. We are adaptive. We are what you make us." She met 1,000 eyes with her own too. "Choose wisely what you make us." Then she was gone, and was left alone in the ruined chamber, surrounded by the evidence of its failure. The classification protocol had tested over 12,000 species. It had never encountered anything like humans. The human shuttle Perseverance pulled away from Station Omicron 73 hours after the alarms first began. Behind it, the station drifted in space, its white surface now with blackened marks from emergency containment fires and the flickering of damaged systems. Sat in the pilot's seat, guiding them away from the station and toward the jump point that would take them home. Her hands were steady on the controls, but exhaustion pulled at every muscle in her body. Behind her, the rest of the team recovered in their own ways. Lay on the medical bed, his wounds cleaned and bandaged. Had done excellent work with limited supplies. He would carry scars, but he would heal. More importantly, he was alive. He drifted in and out of sleep, sometimes mumbling words that made laugh despite everything. Sat beside him, holding his hand. She had not let go since they escaped the chamber. Her knuckles were bruised and her arms ached from the violence she had done, but she did not regret any of it. She would do it all again without hesitation. Worked at the engineering station, running diagnostics on the ship systems. The Perseverance had not been damaged during their escape. The Conquered had been too confused to even think about stopping them, but he wanted to be sure. He also needed to keep his hands busy. It helped him process what had happened. Sat at the communication station, organizing the data they had collected. During their escape, she had downloaded everything she could from the station's computers: medical records, security logs, video footage of the extended evaluation that had conducted, everything. "The transmission is ready," she announced. "I have compiled all evidence of what the Conquered did to us. Once we are clear of the station's jamming range, I can broadcast it to every species in the galactic network." Nodded slowly. "Do it. The galaxy needs to know who these people really are." An hour later, the Perseverance reached safe distance. Press the broadcast button. Across 1,000 star systems, beings of every shape and size received the same message. Proof that the Great Galactic Conquered, the organization that claimed to judge all species fairly, had tortured diplomatic representatives of a newly discovered civilization. The response was immediate. Back on station, Omicron 7 stood in the ruins of its monitoring center and watched the aftermath unfold. Communications flooded in from every corner of the galaxy. Some demanded explanations. Some demanded punishment. Some simply expressed shock that the Conquered could have made such a terrible mistake. And through it all, could not stop thinking about what the humans had done. They had been precise. They had been controlled. They had caused exactly enough damage to escape and no more. The station was not destroyed. Repairs would be possible. Casualties were minimal, mostly injuries, very few deaths. Every action had been calculated to achieve their goal while leaving the door open for future relations. This was not the behavior of mindless beasts. This was not even the behavior of ordinary predators. This was strategy. This was intentional restraint. This was a message. "Examiner," the voice came from behind, turned to see 3 members of the High Council standing in the doorway. Their faces were expressions of barely controlled fury. "You failed," said the first, a tall being with silver skin and multiple arms. "Your classification was wrong. Because of your error, we now face a diplomatic disaster." "I followed standard protocol," said quietly. "The tests showed." "The tests showed nothing." The second counselor, a creature of living flame contained in a crystalline shell, pulsed with angry light. "The humans made fools of us all. They were tested and found harmless, and within hours they had dismantled our security forces and escaped with evidence of our methods." "Methods that you ordered," pointed out. "The extended evaluation was not my decision." Silence fell. The counselors exchanged uncomfortable looks. "That is not the point," the third counselor said eventually. "The point is that we need a new classification for this species, one that accurately reflects their capabilities." Moved to its damaged terminal and began working. Data scrolled across the screen, everything they had learned about humans in the past day. The violence, the coordination, the impossible calm under pressure, the willingness to do anything for their pack members. But also the restraint, the precision, the fact that they had won completely and then walked away instead of continuing the violence. "I have a proposal," said. The counselors leaned forward. "We cannot classify humans as threat. That designation is for species that show constant aggression, that cannot be reasoned with, that must be contained for the safety of others." Pulled up the footage of in the monitoring center. "This human had every reason to kill me. Her people had been tortured. Her mission had been compromised. And yet she gave me a chance to help, and when I helped, she let me live." "Then what do you suggest?" Typed rapidly, creating a new classification entry. "We create a new category, one that has never existed before in our system." The screen displayed. Species human. Previous classification, safe. Revised classification, conditional. Conditional, the silver-skinned counselor frowned. "What does that mean?" It means their threat level depends entirely on how they are treated. Turn to face the Council. Treat them with respect and they will be peaceful allies. They will trade with you, cooperate with you, even die for you if you earn their loyalty. But threaten them, threaten their pack, and they become something else entirely. Added more text to the classification. Warning: species displays extreme threat plasticity. Baseline aggression minimal. Provoked aggression exceeds all recorded parameters. Do not engage in hostile action. Do not separate pack members. Do not underestimate based on physical appearance. Recommendation: maximum diplomatic courtesy. Treat all humans as potential allies unless given specific reason to do otherwise. The counselors studied the new classification in silence. There is one more thing, added. It pulled up a final piece of data, a concept from human language that had no direct translation in any of the Conquered's 1,000 tongues. Additional note: species exhibits phenomenon termed spite. Humans will accept personal loss to ensure that hostile actors suffer consequences. They will sacrifice their own advantage to punish those who wronged them. Logical calculations of cost and benefit do not predict their behavior in conflict situations. Spite, the flame counselor flickered with confusion. They will hurt themselves to hurt others. That makes no sense. It makes perfect sense, said quietly, if you understand that humans do not think only about winning. They think about justice, about fairness, about sending messages. It gestured at the ruined station around them. They could have killed many more of our people tonight. They did not, but they made sure we would never forget what happened. They made sure the whole galaxy would know. That is spite. That is their warning to us. The council considered this for a long moment. Very well, the silver-skinned counselor said finally. The new classification is approved. Humans will be designated as conditional with full diplomatic privileges, and the council will review its policies regarding extended evaluations. They left without another word. Stood alone in the monitoring center for a long time, staring at the new classification on the screen. Far away, the Perseverance approached the jump point that would take it home. Sat in the pilot's seat, watching the stars stretch into lines as the ship prepared to leave conquered space. "Do you think they learned anything?" asked from the medical bed. His voice was weak but steady. Thought about the question carefully. "I think they learned to be afraid of us, whether that is good or bad," she shrugged. "That depends on what they do with that fear." "They might decide we are too dangerous to exist," said quietly. "They might try to destroy Earth before we become more powerful." "They might," agreed. "Or they might decide that having us as friends is better than having us as enemies. That is their choice to make." Looked up from his bedside, "And if they choose wrong?" Smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "Then they will learn what 12,000 other species never had to learn. They will learn what happens when you make an enemy of humanity." She turned back to the controls. "We are not the biggest species in the galaxy. We are not the strongest. We are not but we are the most stubborn. We do not give up. We do not surrender. And we never ever forget." The Perseverance jumped into hyperspace, carrying its crew home. Behind them, the Galactic Conquered began the long process of rebuilding, not just their station, but their entire understanding of what it meant to be dangerous. The test had labeled humans as safe. The test had been wrong, and the galaxy would never make that mistake again.